Well, good morning. If you're here for Is Brand Strategy Guiding Your Major Donor Communications, you're in the right place. We're going to wait a couple of minutes as people join us, but really glad that you're here and appreciate you being on the call with us. Um, as we're waiting for folks, we'd love it if you threw your name in the chat, even just your first name, organization that you represent, maybe your job title, and your favorite kind of ice cream. I am an ice cream guy. I like to know. Um, for me, I feel like ice cream should have a vanilla base with something mixed into it, like chocolate chip cookie dough or caramel or something like that. But go ahead, throw your name, your favorite kind of ice cream in the chat, as well as the organization that you're with and the role that you play within that organization. Tammy, I'm going to ask you to, just as we're waiting for folks, your favorite kind of, oh, I see right there, chocolate chip. Way to go. I see that Lauren believes in mint chip and mint chip believes in you as well. I don't know if anyone watches the Good Place, but in the Good Place, one of the things that comes up is frozen yogurt as a sign of mediocrity, and I also believe that too. That frozen yogurt simply isn't as good as ice cream, and I will take that controversial opinion right off the bat while we wait for a few more folks to join us. Please disagree with me in the chat. And I see a few more folks filtering in. Again, we're just going to wait 1 or 2 minutes before we get going. And you'll note that in the chat you see Mission Minded as a voice on there as well. That's our colleague Bonnie. And Bonnie is here to just make sure that the webinar works right, does what it needs to do, answer any questions that might come up, and facilitate any troubleshooting if anybody's having any challenges. She says that we don't discriminate against frozen yogurt people, and that's true. But we do have a clear hierarchy and believe that ice cream is better than yogurt. At least I do, and I'm gonna stand by that. I'm sure, Tammy, you'll be much more diplomatic about the ice cream versus frozen yogurt debate.
Anything that's frozen and refreshing and cool in the mouth, I love it.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm glad you're bringing up gelato as well, because that's a whole nother category of excellence, and agree. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. We are here to talk about whether brand strategy and how brand strategy is guiding your major donor communications. With me today is Tammy Sims Johnson from the Santa Barbara Foundation, where she's Vice President of Philanthropic Services. And we're going to take a second. We'll introduce ourselves. I'm just delighted that Tammy is joining this conversation today because of the wealth of knowledge and experience that she brings to this conversation. As the slide here indicates, I'm Zach Hochstadt. I'm one of the founders of Mission Minded, and I serve as our creative director. And as many of you might know, Mission Minded is a strategy and creative firm that helps good causes have greater impact. So we believe that the organizations that make our world better, like Santa Barbara Foundation, like many of the organizations that you all represent, need to be unapologetically bold about what makes you unique. So every day we partner with nonprofits, with foundations, with schools to help them raise more money, to attract more people to their work with the urgency that their mission demands. Because when you make your unique case with the clarity and conviction that it deserves, there's no limit to the support that your organization can attract. So we've been doing this work now for 23 years, helping organizations really figure out who they are, what's at their core, and how to bring that to life. And we have that happen through a variety of services, through leadership coaching, through capital campaign communications, strategic planning, admissions campaigns. And I think sort of at the heart of our work, brand strategy, the messaging work that comes with it, the visual identity work that goes alongside it, and then the other marketing tools that support that brand. And fortunately, we've had the opportunity to do this with a whole host of organizations around the country and sometimes even around the world, helping them think deeply about what makes them stand out and what makes them special. Tammy, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and your organization as well. Tammy?
Sure. No, thank you for having me. This is a pleasure. So I'm Tammy Sims Johnson, as you shared, Vice President of Philanthropic Services at the Santa Barbara Foundation. And the Santa Barbara Foundation is a community foundation. If folks are familiar with the public charities of community foundations, we've been around since 1928, and our goal is to improve the quality of life for residents in this region, and that includes the full Santa Barbara County region. And when people think about Santa Barbara, they specifically think about the city, but actually our foundation covers the whole county, which starts in Carpinteria and goes all the way up through the mid-county. People know about Santa Ynez and Los Olivos, Buellton, Solvang, all the way up to Santa Maria and the border of San Luis Obispo. So a huge region. We have about 500,000, little less than 500,000 people in our region. And our goal is to support those who are marginalized, who need resources to improve their quality of life. And we do that in partnership with our nonprofit sector. We're here to build and support our nonprofit sector so they can do the good work that they do every day to support our nonprofit sector.
Well, thank you for that. And Tammy, I might put you on the spot here for a second as well and say, before Santa Barbara Foundation, you've been a long time fundraiser, and I wonder if you might just sort of quickly reflect on some of the other roles that you've played before getting here.
Sure. I actually came from the Community Foundation down in Los Angeles. Prior to joining this foundation, I was with the California Community Foundation for 10 years as their Director of Donor Relations, and had the privilege of working with LA-based donors. I'm from Los Angeles, and I've also worked with philanthropists. I had a chance to work at a private family foundation in Los Angeles by one of our former mayors. And one of my first jobs out of college was in the mayor's office. So I'm going to date myself because I was at the Tom Bradley's administration. So the last year of his administration, and I had the privilege of being a communications director at that time, and helping our CEO there fundraise for a brand new after-school program serving kids in elementary school in the after-school hours. So,
I I
um,
I appreciate all that great experience, Tammy. Thank you for basically sharing your knowledge with us for the next hour. And I before we get into the specific challenges that Santa Barbara Foundation is facing, I just want to put sort of a bigger question out. And as I ask this question, I want to encourage others to throw questions into the chat or into the Q&A that you have on your Zoom. And the question I'm going to ask is this moment different right now? If we look at where we stand in the last week, in the last month and a half, what are you looking at as in a senior role, in a senior fundraising role that is similar to what you've seen in the past, and what is unusual and different from what you've seen before?
Oh, wow. Well, definitely a big question. We're all watching what's happening in our country. We started the new year and had to put our seatbelt on because so much is happening. At the same time, we're listening to our nonprofit sector and we're listening to our donors. And we've seen other challenges before. Of course, this is new for all of us. But when I think about just other challenges that, community foundations have experienced in your tenure, we see wildfires, we see floods, earthquakes, COVID. Whenever these are major kind of disasters, this is when we really have an opportunity to engage our donors, and they're so generous and they're so interested in being helpful. And so I'm actually inspired in these moments, as difficult as it may be, because people are reaching out and asking what's happening, what can we do more? And
Yeah,
it makes my work every day very fulfilling.
I appreciate. Thank you. And Sort of a related question is this a good time to be a fundraiser? Is this a bad time to be a fundraiser? Like, does this environment make it easier or harder, or just, a new set of challenges?
I would say definitely a new set of challenges. We see up and down markets, we see tragedies, and when you have an engaged donor base, they step up. And this is when it really pays off, when you are building long-term relationships with your donors.
Yeah.
And they're partners. And when you reach out to them, they'll let you know what their capacity is to give, and you just work with them and help them, have meaningful giving.
Oh, thank you. Um, we're going to talk about brand strategy being at the heart of a fundraising campaign and your fundraising asks. And I wonder if you might set the stage for us and help us understand, sort of what's going on in Santa Barbara. Why now? Why did Santa Barbara Foundation decide that now was the time that you'd think about branding and in relation to your fundraising? And I'm gonna give you this helpful slide as I ask that question.
Well, thank you. Yes, so it's a special time for us because we just launched a new strategic plan in 2024, and it's leading up to our centennial. A lot of our older community foundations are turning 100. I came from a foundation in Los Angeles that turned 100 in 2015. And so we are 3 years away from our centennial, and in our new strategic plan, we actually have a goal, a priority to deepen the awareness of our foundation. We want to talk about our impact through branding. So we had the foresight. Actually, I give our CEO, Jackie Carrera, credit. She was looking and has been kind of socking away resources so that we can prepare for this time, to build our brand and to further engage our community. There's a saying in the community foundation world: when you've met one community foundation, you've met one community foundation. And we're all challenged to articulate what we do. There's confusion about what we do, and different sectors of our populations touch the elephant of the community foundation in different ways. And so how can we succinctly describe what we do in a way that people understand? Because community foundations do so much. And so that's always a challenge for our sector. And then we're looking to celebrate our centennial. And we know in order to do that, this is an opportunity to refresh our brand, our messaging, the look and feel of all of our materials as we lead up to 2028.
Wow.
And do you want me to keep going
I
on some
mean,
of the things you list here?
yeah, please do.
Yeah, yeah. So we have many audiences that we engage with the community foundations. We have donors, nonprofits, we have professional advisors, we have private foundations, we have the government. And so how do we design messaging that is an umbrella really for all of our audiences? And then at the same time, create targeted messaging that reaches them so that they further engage with us. And we're looking ahead. We're looking for the next generation of donors and partners to come alongside this work. And we're just looking to overall just energize our stakeholders,
Yeah.
our donor base.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Well, and this is a journey that we've had, sort of the pleasure of being on with you for the last 7, 8 months. As together we've done research and understood those various audiences, their drivers, and what brings them here. Before we get into the sort of the outgrowth of that work and what has meant for Santa Barbara Foundation, I'm going to take a moment and just review what is brand and what do we mean by it? Because we're talking about branding, but brand means different things to different people. And for some folks, brand can mean a name, or they might use it as a synonym for logo. But when we're talking about brand, we see brand as a synonym for reputation. And we recognize that all of us have a reputation, whether we go about that intentionally or not. Our actions, our words, the experiences people have with us build our personal reputations. And the same thing is true for our organizations, that our organizations have a reputation out in our communities. And we have an opportunity to craft that reputation, to help people understand us in the ways that we want to be understood in order for them to want to engage with us and do more. So when we think about brand, we recognize that brand is then reflected in lots of different ways. Brand is reflected in how your organization looks, how it sounds, how it acts, and fundamentally what you do. And so when we say how we look, we're talking about your visual identity, your logo, your color, your typography, all of those visual signals that you send out into the world about who you are and how you want people to understand you. When we talk about how you sound, we're thinking about the messaging, the name, the tagline, the words that you use for people to understand the work that you're doing. Oftentimes, organizations forget about actions and forget about the fact that actions speak louder than words. And so little things can make a big difference. Not to put you on the spot, Tammy, but when we first started working with Santa Barbara Foundation, there was a sign on the door that said, you have to call this number and if you want to be let in through the door. Well, that sent a message to your community that you were a little bit aloof or unapproachable or a little bit out of reach. You've taken down that sign, and it's now much easier to come visit your offices. And that's a little thing, but it's a thing that sends a message to your community and says, we're here for you and with you. And all of our organizations, through our actions, how we greet people, how we say hello and goodbye, acknowledge success and acknowledge failure, all of those actions are ways in which we express our brand. And then we think about brand in what we do. And brand, should influence your strategic decision making. Your board should be reflecting on who are we as an institution and how does that guide the decisions that we might make. Given that, brand is then everybody's responsibility throughout your organization, from leadership down to your frontline staff, your volunteers, your board. Everybody is a representative of that brand and they bring it to life. And as a result, then brand can do a lot for your organization. It creates a relationship with your key audiences, and it helps to make it so that that people feel like they're connected with you. And so when we think about brand, we want brand to be bigger than just the individuals you might know at an institution, but rather that we have a relationship with the institution as a whole. The other thing that brand might do for you is that brand minimizes competitive threats. And we're all in a collaborative atmosphere, right? Our organizations are out there, they're doing important work, and we're collaborating with other organizations to do that. And at the same time, we recognize that there are others who are in that space as well and who are competing for donor dollars. And the more we can have our organizations stand apart in a unique space, the better understood we are, and the more that we can to connect with those with whom we can achieve greater impact. Another thing that a strong brand does for us is it makes us a better collaborator. So just as we recognize that it helps us stand out from our competitors, when we know who we are and what we bring to the table, it's much easier to collaborate with others and do great work together. We've all seen that organization that's trying to take credit for everything because they're sort of constantly searching for every donor dollar that they can get. And so no one wants to work with them because they're busy saying that we do it all. An organization that's built around clarity of what you specifically bring to the table makes it easier for you to connect with and work with other institutions as well. Another thing that a strong brand can do is it can defend against negative news. And, negative news can be a big explosive thing, or sometimes negative news is a small thing. It might be your logo on the side of a van that just cut somebody off in traffic. And that little thing might reflect badly on the organization. Now, if you're well known and understood and appreciated, people might give you the benefit of the doubt. But if that is their only experience with you, that you're the organization who cuts people off in traffic, they're not likely to give to you. So what we want to have happen is that our brand stands for something. Frankly, people don't like cognitive dissonance. They hate it when information comes in and competes with what they think they already know. And so by building a brand, you're building this base of knowledge about your organization so that when conflicting information comes in, people are more likely to say, that's an anomaly. That's not who this organization really is. Another thing a strong brand can do is increase the impact of your gift. And by this, I'm thinking about from the foundation standpoint, the grant that you're making, the gift that you're making to other organizations has greater power when the brand of the institution is strong. That is, if Santa Barbara Foundation were to give a $10,000 grant in the community and do so anonymously, then they would have transferred $10,000 to an institution. When Santa Barbara Foundation gives a $10,000 grant and is public about who they are, having made that grant, the power of the brand of Santa Barbara Foundation is transferred onto that organization, and it then helps others so they can see that that's a valuable institution that they too want to support. And so, investing in your brand as a funder can have really big impact. Tammy, I'm going to pause on that one. Just ask if you have any comment on that or any of the other ones that I just said.
Oh my goodness. And I will be candid. I was answering Emily's question in the chat.
Oh, great,
Um,
great.
but it's important to not be humble in the good work that you're doing, to talk about the grants that you're making and the impact that they're having, because it inspires other donors to do the same. And so we oftentimes we fall into the trap sometimes as a community foundation to try to be humble, to be secondary, and to make sure that our nonprofit sector is shining, and that's what we want. At the same time, we need to let folks know that by activating donors, we're able to do more in the community. So we definitely want to, toot our own horn a little bit. And so that's what we're working toward.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm going to share one or two more things that a strong brand does for us. And the last one I'll say here is a strong brand makes it easier for your audiences to say yes to you. When people understand an organization, they're more likely to be able to quickly say that gift. And an example of this is if I said that I gave $100 to everybody on this webinar, and right now you have to make a choice. You either have to give that $100 to the Sierra Club, or you have to give it to the Northern California Conservation Fund. And when I put that question out there, you probably know right away whether you'll give to the Sierra Club. Either it's a yes or a no, it doesn't matter, but we have a sense of the Sierra Club brand, and therefore we can make our decision relatively quickly. But with the Northern California Conservation Fund, it's much harder to answer that question because I made it up and it doesn't really exist. And so you have to ask yourself, like, does this organization align with my values? What do they stand for? Will they be good stewards of my dollars? And that work stops you in your tracks and makes it less likely for you to give. So an investment in brand truly does make it easier for your donors to say yes to partnering with you. So with that prelude, we're going to talk for a moment about the Santa Barbara Foundation brand and the work that we all have been doing together over the last couple of months. And I want to start by asking you, Tammy, to just kind of lay out what are some of the key challenges that you were seeing as we came into this work? What makes branding Santa Barbara Foundation difficult?
Oh, wow. So what's interesting, and it's all about perception. Um, when people think about Santa Barbara Foundation, they think we're only serving Santa Barbara City proper. They think about kind of the Montecito, Santa Barbara area. And that's so far from the truth, because it's a foundation that supports the whole county. And so that's one of the challenges. Just like our name itself is a challenge. And
Hmm.
so how do we overcome that? Overcome that by developing a strong brand that really articulates that we're here to serve the whole county. And then when you think about the various landscapes and demographics of our community, it couldn't be more diverse. We have people along the kind of the coastal areas. We have people in agricultural areas. We have an Air Force base here. So there are many diverse populations, and we just need to articulate how we serve the residents through the nonprofits in those sectors.
Yeah.
Yeah, many differences that we have to overcome.
I think that's a challenge that I imagine many of the folks on this webinar can relate to, that they serve diverse communities, and that diversity extends through geography, through wealth, through language, through culture, through all sorts of different differences, and especially to be a community foundation, to try and show this is where we come together, and this is what makes us us, is a difficult challenge, and yet one that we all face in one way or another, in saying here's what connects us rather than here's what divides us. Yeah. Um, as we were doing this work, one of the things that we did is we spent some time thinking about who are your audiences. And as we just said, like, if we were thinking about all of the demographic differentiators, we might come up with a list of 50 different audiences that you're trying to serve. So instead, we did work to say, what are the things that connect your audiences? And so we did values-based audiences, thinking about your audiences from a place of what connects them to the work and what are they trying to move forward. And so I wonder if you might just walk us through who those audiences ended up being for Santa Barbara Foundation.
I will, and I will also give you and your team credit for helping us grow to these values-based audiences, because I feel like that was a sticking point for us, because we're so linear in how we want to talk to donors, talk to advisors, talk to the nonprofit sector, talk to the government sector. And so when we think about them based on their values, it really crystallized this for me. It was a hurdle that we were able to overcome, and I'm grateful for Mission Minded for that. So these are the
Thank you.
audiences that we came up with. Community advocates, these are the folks that deeply care about their local or region, their own community. The big-hearted, these are people who care deeply about people and feel compelled to address the need. And then we have those problem solvers. These are the people who care deeply about addressing systemic problems effectively and efficiently. And then we have those motivated donors who care deeply about the extrinsic, I can never say that word, and intrinsic rewards of philanthropy.
Yeah. To your point too, I think one of the things that's interesting about doing values-based audiences is that you might find that as a donor, you sit in more than one of these categories, but these are the key drivers that you bring you to the Santa Barbara Foundation. And likewise, what you might find is that community advocates includes a nonprofit leader and a local government official and a philanthropist who all share that perspective. And they're more likely to connect about their love of the community than they are to say, I'm a donor, I'm a donor. No, it's like we all are here because we care about our local and regional Santa Barbara County.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, one of the next steps that we took together too was to move from thinking about audiences into thinking about a brand architecture. What are the key elements of your brand, and how do we bring them to life? And the categories that we look at when we think about branding are, first of all, what's the mission of the organization? What do you exist to do? And on top of that mission as a foundation, we say, what are the values? So what's the essence of who we are? Sort of the values that guide us. What are the key things? And at Mission Minded, we always encourage our clients to put those values into active verbs, things that the organization can live out, as opposed to just static words that might sit there. And if I say that one of our values is honesty, right? First of all, every organization should be honest, but also honesty is sort of static. But if I instead say do the right thing and say what you mean, well, those are statements that as an employee or as a board member, I know how to live into. The next category over here, personality attributes help us think about the tone and the voice of the organization, the style. How do we show up in how we're projecting things about ourselves? And then we move into the experience. And what does it feel like to engage with the organization? What are the sort of the tangible benefits that someone gets from interacting with us? And what are the more emotional benefits that someone receives when they're engaging with the organization? And all of that laddering up to positioning. So what makes us unique? What is that special thing that helps us stand out? So Tammy, will you walk us through what that meant for Santa Barbara Foundation?
Yes. So this is where we landed. And as you know, we went through many iterations to get here. So the position that we landed on was impact, connection, and expertise. And this really came through loud and clear from we put together a branding committee made up of people from our board, people who just recently cycled off the board. Some of them had extensive experience in branding and marketing, and others just really knew Santa Barbara County really well. And so we got so many different perspectives from all of the audiences that we've talked about before. And so we're so pleased that we landed here because we do think that this is our differentiator. This is what makes us unique as a community foundation in Santa Barbara County through our impact, connection, and expertise. And then the values that we landed on in doing many focus groups, many regional meetings. It's not just what we think our values are. It's a collaboration with the community and how they see us. And this is where we landed. We build trust and earn respect. We listen and learn. We think big, and we include with intention. And
Thank
our
you.
brand personality. I love how, Zach, I think it was you who said, if your brand walked into the room, what would be the personality that they exuded? Like, how would you relate with this person's personality? And this is where we landed: expert, collaborative, caring, and trustworthy. And then our brand experience. When I engage with the Santa Barbara Foundation, I feel meaningfully connected to this community I love. So that's the experience we want them to have in engaging with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Well, a good brand equation is internal. It helps us as a staff and as a board understand what it is we're trying to say about ourselves. But there's a next step. And that next step is to think about, well, how does this translate into messaging? What do we actually say to the public? How do we live this positioning out? And so this is the internal guide for the brand that Santa Barbara Foundation wants to live into. But then we have to translate that into the visual identity, which we're currently about to embark on, and the words, like what's the language that is used for Santa Barbara Foundation to bring this to life. And so before we go into, I'm going to go back one slide and just say, this slide does sort of tell us how that translates over. So when we think about the brand values, it becomes the cornerstones of our message development. The personality helps guide the tone of our voice. When we think about the experience, it's how audiences should feel. So we're really thinking about the emotional takeaway someone should have as they're reading our materials or listening to a speech. And then that positioning is the key differentiator in our storytelling. When we tell a story, this is the takeaway we want someone to have after they've heard that story. So we're going to talk a little bit about a messaging structure that you all can use as you think about bringing your own brands to life. But before we do, I just want to cover some message basics, some ways in which you can express some important things about your organization that helps to invite others in. Because all of us at one point or another are creating barriers to understanding, barriers to interacting. And the more that we make our communications accessible and understandable, the more likely people will want to engage with us. So the first thing that we would encourage you to do is to use your name and use your whole name. Santa Barbara Foundation is a great example of this because there could be a desire to use SBF. It's a lot easier to say, and remember, it's shorter. There's only 3 letters as opposed to the full Santa Barbara Foundation name. And yet, when we shorten our names and condense it down, we miss an opportunity to have people understand the importance of the work that we're doing. Take the ASPCA for an example. Many of us have interacted with the SPCA over the years when we've adopted a cat or a dog. But if you take the full name of that organization, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, well, that really says a lot, and it helps remind us of the most important parts of their mission. If I am outside the pet adoption world and I hear ASPCA for the first time, I don't know what that stands for, and I might not ask. And people don't like to feel dumb. And so they're likely to then just not ask and miss the opportunity for connection. So when we spell out our full name and use our full name, we create greater opportunities for connection. and for comprehension. And this sort of related to that is we want to avoid jargon, because when we are using insider language, we're again creating walls and barriers around what we do. And it makes it harder for people to interact with us. In fact, I'm going to invite in the chat, go ahead and give me some of the favorite jargon that you see inside your organization. What are some of the words that people sometimes have trouble understanding in relation to the work that you do? So go ahead and give a couple examples in the chat for us, please. And while you're doing that, I'll just think about, even words that we come across all the time. I mean, Tammy, in your world, talking about donor advised funds is pretty regular, right? And then that sometimes gets abbreviated to DAF. But a donor advised fund for somebody outside the philanthropic world might be really hard to understand, right? Yeah.
That's a great example. And we also try to move away from philanthropy speak, that internal language that we use in the work that we do. And even phrases like leverage, I think, throw people off. Like, what do you mean? Even co-invest. People like, what do you mean by that? So we really try. Oh, low-hanging fruit. That's funny. Yes, we're sustainable, regenerative, resilient. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to get away from. It's accurate, but we really are kind of speaking to the choir, and we really need to make it plain for folks to understand.
Yeah, I love the examples that people have put in here: stakeholders, low-hanging fruit, even words like collaboratives. We want to find the word that can capture all of it. And yet, the more sort of highfalutin our language, the more likely we will lose people along the way and not have them connect. So finding everyday words to explain what you do doesn't make your word dumber. I mean, excuse me, your work any dumber. What it does, though, is make it more accessible and easier for other people to join with you. So we really encourage you to find that everyday language so that you can invite others in. Another thing that you can do is use repetition. In my lifetime, the number of messages that an adult is exposed to every day has, I think it's gone up 100-fold since I was a kid in terms of the number of messages that I receive every single day and have to sort through. And as a result, it is really hard to remember things. If I'm McDonald's, I have an incredible marketing budget, and I can make sure that people will hear my message and understand it, whether you like it or not. I'm going to, saturate the internet and the radio and TV and billboards, and whether it's going to be in your head, ba 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 ba, and you can't avoid that. But if you are a nonprofit or a foundation, which presumably everybody on this call is, then you don't have that kind of marketing budget. You don't have the ability to saturate the airwaves. And so that means that you have to be very disciplined and very consistent over a long period of time for people to really hear what you're saying, to understand you. And the nice thing about that repetition too is you build trust. When you show up and you're saying the same thing over time, it helps people remember who you are and also know that you are consistent and that you sort of stand for the same things. If you're constantly changing, people start to believe that you don't know who you are or what you stand for, and they're less likely to trust you. Another thing that we would say is don't try and say it all. And oftentimes in messaging, there's this desire, there's going to be a test on this. I need to make sure that everybody understands all of the details. I got to get it all across. And we would say, it's much better to focus in on one thing and just have people understand just a single point. And lastly, I would say, highlight benefits instead of features. And I think many organizations are guilty of this. We want to talk about the details first and foremost, but the details don't matter if you haven't connected it to why it's important. And so a very simple example of this is a dog leash. If I come to you and I say, I want you to buy a 6-foot-long nylon cord that's double reinforced on both ends and has a nickel-plated hook and is made of sustainable materials, nobody's buying it. If I say, I want you to buy this dog leash because with it, you'll have control of your dog in public and your dog can't run away and it can't get in a fight with another dog, and it's made of sustainable materials so you can feel a little bit better about your impact on the earth, All of those things are the reasons we buy that dog leash. We care about the benefits much more than the features. And so when you're writing your communications, check every sentence. Have I just said something, or have I explained why it's important? Have I brought it back to the because? When we're working with our clients, we are often talking to them about creating a messaging structure. So most organizations do this in reverse. They flood people with so many details that people walk away. They can't remember anything about the organization. Instead, we would have you start with, well, what do we believe fundamentally? What's at the highest level of what's important to our organization? Because people are drawn to shared beliefs. And then we talk about, well, what are some of the challenges that exist? What's the context for our organization? What's our why? And by establishing that, we can then tell stories of impact. Here's what's happened as a result of your gift or your work or your time. Here's what's going on. And we tell those personal stories of impact because it helps bring to life the impact that we're having in our community before we finally get into those details. And even then, when we talk about the details of our work, we connect them back to benefits so that people understand this is what we're doing and here's why it's important. Another way of thinking about this, if I'm going to flip this whole thing on its side, is to think about the engagement funnel. So for many of you who are marketing fundraisers, you're thinking about how am I communicating with folks and what happens and in what order. And essentially, when we start with our belief message, we are creating awareness about our organization. We then move to a place of developing interest by talking about our why and what are the problems that exist in our society. We then drive desire by talking about the impact that we have through those personal stories. And in our details, we're actually asking for action. And this is where we're telling people what they can do to have an impact. So this engagement funnel is probably part of many of your communications thoughts as well, as you're inviting people into your organizations. We have just enough time that we can talk about the first part of that message structure, which is the belief message. And so this is that awareness phase. And when we think about a belief message, what we're thinking about is, it's essentially, it's an elevator pitch. It is, what do you have time to say, maybe 30 seconds so that people understand just enough about your organization that they want to know more. And so the first is a good belief message puts a stake in the ground. It gives high level information. It builds some level of comprehension. It suggests the problem that you solve, but it doesn't do it all. It just gives enough. So essentially it's, we believe, so we do something because when we do something great happens, or when we don't, something bad might happen. But essentially it's this really quick look at what do we believe as an organization. And one example of this can be seen in the message we developed for the Bay Area Discovery Museum. We believe that children grow and thrive through joyful play. So every day we create playful learning experiences that inspire a lifelong passion for discovery in every child and connect them with the people and the world around them, because play is essential to children's well-being and helps all of us grow up to be creative, collaborative results. And so this very much hews to the formula that I laid out there. We believe, and it's a fundamental belief. So every day, and we use every day because it pushes us to using active verbs to describe what we're doing. And then because here's a why, here's why this is important. And so we think about each one of those steps together. So broken down, we believe, so we, because. Now, that is a message that very much closely follows that framework, but sometimes we need to move and adjust and allow for some flexibility. And so, Tammy, I'm going to ask you to share the new belief message for Santa Barbara Foundation, which does all of those things. It just doesn't use those same exact keywords. Do you want to share this one?
I do, because we're very excited that we landed on it. And once again, many iterations, lots of good feedback. So it's a process you have to be very patient with, but we're so glad we landed here. So as your community foundation, Santa Barbara Foundation actively connects donors, nonprofits, government, and businesses, and the people of this county to take on the challenges that affect us all. We know that together we can do more. That's why we mobilize charitable giving and connect our expertise and resources to yours. Working together, we create meaningful impact on the issues you care about in the communities we all love. I'm
There's
so
a lot
happy
in
with
that.
this. there's a lot
Yeah.
here. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm
what?
so excited about where we're going to go from here
Yeah.
once we have this. Yeah.
Do you want to share more about what you love about it?
Well, first of all, our CEO really wanted love to be part of this message. And it's gone through many iterations. And I'm so glad that we actually landed on and literally end with love, because that was really important to her and to all of us. And we, even though there was discussion about having this kind of laundry list of people that we work with, audiences that we work with, we wanted to spell it out because we wanted to be very clear, like a definitive statement of like who we work with, donors, nonprofits, government, business, and people of this county. And we wanted to make sure that we were emphasizing together. So we actually used the word together twice in our statement, in the middle sentence that you see and in the last sentence. And mobilize is a word that we still struggle with, but it's currently in our mission statement. So we decided to keep it because it's actually the right word for now, because that's what we do. We mobilize
Yeah.
charitable giving.
Yeah. Thank you. When you have a belief message, it's the kind of thing that you would expect everyone in the organization to truly memorize, to be able to say verbatim. At Mission Minded, we have a weekly staff meeting, and in that staff meeting, we randomly call on one person to be able to share that belief message, just sort of reinforcing that all of us should have it at the ready. Um, Different organizations do different things. Some make it part of performance reviews, which can be a little heavy-handed. Others make it more fun. We had one client who did a message off and challenged people to do an impersonation, but through that impersonation to share their belief message. So you can make it fun, you can make it playful, but most importantly, it really should be embedded in your culture. It should be something that you start important meetings with. It should be something that it goes into your print materials and on the web and all sorts of places to really reinforce who you are and what makes you special. So we're going to take a couple minutes here. We're going to ask and invite you to write your own belief message. And so you thought you were just listening, but now you have to get pen and paper out or on your computer, and we're going to challenge you to write your own belief message following this formula. So we believe. So every day, because, and what you're saying, we believe, here's our core belief. So here's the thing that you do because, and an example or sort of the framework here is at name of your organization, we believe this deeply held value, that special thing that you uniquely believe. Every day and this is where you use some verbs to describe it, for whom, because, and here's why you do that. Now, we're going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. We're literally going to stop talking for 3 or 4 minutes as you work on this yourself. So go ahead, see if you can come up with a belief message for your organization. And I'm going to flip back several slides and go to the example we saw with the Bay Area Discovery Museum. So again, you can see that belief, what that's special to them. So the everyday they do something, and here's why they do it. And I know it's not enough time, but I'm going to give you 1 more minute to just keep working on it. Challenging as it is to do in this short amount of time, I know that a couple of you pulled it off. And so I'm going to ask that if you wrote a belief message, go ahead and share it in the chat, and let's see how it works. There's a couple of you on here that are actual mission-minded clients, so you have the benefit of copying and pasting the message that already exists for your organization. But if you wouldn't mind being a volunteer and sort of putting yourself forward, if you have a belief message that you wrote in that space, we'd really appreciate it. Doesn't have to be polished. No one expects perfection in that short amount of time. But go ahead and throw it in the chat. Thank you. So I see at Bananas Early Care and Education, we believe that all children can grow up to succeed in life, and that they should have all the support and tools that they need to be eager, joyful, and curious learners. That's why we partner with all types of families and childcare providers to raise happy, confident children. Our support allows working families to thrive, be confident their children are in quality and nurturing learning environments. That's great. I see a lot of really powerful things in here. Now, I don't know anything about bananas. It's my first time engaging with you, and I can understand that you really care, that this is a place where my child will thrive, and that you're supporting working families. And so all of those are quick and easy takeaways from that belief message, and I think it's a really good example. Anyone else willing to put one forward? All right. I see Sonia added one as well. So we believe in the deep connection between people and planet, Adam and Adamah. Every day, we help people feel that connection, spark Jewish inspiration, and help build a more sustainable future for all. And because we are the link between our ancestors and our descendants, we are called upon to respond to the existential crisis of our time with the full power of Jewish spirit. And I do recognize that from Adamah, because I had a chance to work on that with you, and I really love that one, and love the work that we had a chance to do together for what is really sort of the Jewish sustainability movement in the world. Okay, Lauren, thank you for putting one last example up here, and I'll read this one out loud as well. And I hear your acknowledgement, rough. So I haven't read it yet myself, but I'm sure it's great. At the Multinational Exchange for Sustainable Agriculture, MESA, we believe that healthy food not only sustains our bodies, but also nourishes and connects us to our families, our friends, and our community. Because the average US farmer is 60 years old, we need more farmers to be protectors of our precious environment. MESA works to provide experiential training for the next generation of sustainable farmers. That's great. And also, like, particularly great. Yeah. Tammy, do you want to say?
No. I was going to say, for a rough draft, that was great, Lauren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just really, what I like about this is I'm sure you have very sophisticated programs. You're doing all sorts of things. And in this short span, you give us enough to understand who MESA is, why what you do is important, why we should care. And it makes me want to ask more. And that's really what a good belief message should do, is it should spark some level of curiosity. So I want to take that next step and that next step. So, all right, I was going to move on, but now I see that Timothy put one more up here. So I'll read it and then I'll move us forward. So at Greenleaf, Kenya, we believe that lasting change begins with the people. It's the strength, understanding, and vision of local communities that drive meaningful transformation, inspire action towards a sustainable future. And I do think that there's the opportunity in this one to use the word every day, because that would push you into using some active verbs to describe what you're doing. And I'll say the other reason I like those active verbs is in the nonprofit world, we're so good at coming up with nouns and like labeling things and listing things, and it doesn't engage people. And the more we can move to those active verbs, the more we invite others to do that work with us. So there's a whole lot more to this messaging structure. We talked about the belief message part of it, but if you continue on with this work, the next step would be to come up with some problem messages and think about what are some of the challenges that make your organization necessary, to be able to tell stories that illustrate the impact that you're having, and then be able to share those details combined with benefits. So as we think about bringing your brand to life, brand comes to life in all sorts of different ways, right? How we look, how we sound, how we act, and what we do. And you'll want to be thinking not just about your messaging, but all of the ways in which you're expressing the signals about who you are to the bigger world. I do want to take a second and mention that we're have come up with some rapid response fundraising packages. We know that for many of you, right now is a challenging time, and we've come up with some simple ways to interact with Mission Minded, so you can mobilize new messaging. And so we will follow up. For everybody who participated in this webinar with some more information. You'll get that in an email along with a recording of today's presentation so that you can share it with others within your organization and come back and reflect on some of the things that you learned today. We do have a couple minutes left for questions. So if there are more questions that you want to share, please put them in here. And we do see this one from Emily. Is that what you were looking at, Tammy?
Actually, there was one before that I answered for Emily, but there's two new ones if you can see them in the question and answer.
Yes. Well,
and I was saving them for you, Zach.
All right, good. Well, I'm actually going to ask, Emily asked this question about, saying thanks for the shouting out the smaller staffs and marketing budgets. What can we do right now to leverage limited resources and sort of less polished participant storytelling in a way that stands out amongst the professionalized social media culture? Wow, that's a good question and a tough question, because it's not easy to sort of pit yourself against professionally polished things. But if it's within the brand of your organization to answer in an authentic and grassroots voice, then it would make sense to develop stories and videos that are less polished. One of the nice things about social media, frankly, is that it's a great equalizer. And sometimes the less polished video is just as moving and as captivating as the one that is more professionally done. So I would encourage you, with whatever budget you have, get really clear about what's the story you should be telling. What makes you uniquely you? What's the number one takeaway you want people to have about your organization? And then help guide your storytellers to tell the stories that will reinforce that point. Make sure that you have clear calls to action as you share those on social media. And I would say better to do something than nothing at all. I also see this question from Maureen Russell. She says, the strong brand attributes are awesome. Going deeper on reputation and collaboration, can you speak to a brand's community and followers and how to leverage an organization's collective to help expand and build a brand mission and services through engagement? I'd speak to a brand's community and followers to leverage an organization's collective to expand. Okay, so I think what you're asking here is, how do we use our broader audiences to build our brand? And I would say, sort of speak of your brand every day. Make sure that you are finding every opportunity you can to live out that brand. And what you're going to find then is that your broader community becomes the voice for that brand as well. The better they experience and understand it, the more they're going to be able to internalize it and share it in their own voice. And so that means you're going to be sick of saying the same things over and over. You're going to be sick of saying your belief message. But that consistency over time really does help bring your brand or build your brand. Any last questions? And I guess I see, what are the top tips you recommend for solicitation campaigns and responding to the moment without alienating a diverse constituent pool? Tammy, this is your question to end on, because it's I think, your world every day.
It is. Thank you for the question, Sonia. Actually, I started to answer a little bit of it in the chat because we're all faced with this question right now. And our recommendation is to be very specific and share concrete examples and tell stories of the impact that your communities are facing as a result of this moment. And so one example that we're currently looking at is Head Start. We're looking at the potential impacts to Head Start, and we're talking to our nonprofit providers in that space. And we'll be prepared to give concrete numbers and examples of the impact of Head Start in Santa Barbara County. And that's something that we'd be willing to put right in front of our donor base. They want to know because it's going to impact the whole county. Not having quality childcare, especially for our lowest income population, will be devastating. So my recommendation is to share concrete examples and tell stories.
And I'll end with one last thought, which is look for the things that unite rather than divide.
Yeah.
And there are fundamental beliefs that across the political spectrums that we all share. And so when we think about Head Start, talking about Head Start as a label could be divisive. But when we talk about we want every early learner in our community to have the best possible start so that they can go on and succeed, that's the kind of thing that everyone's going to nod along and agree with. And so look for those places of commonality and connection. With that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to Tammy for joining me in this hour and for having this great conversation. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We will follow up with an email that gives you more opportunity to continue this conversation and engage. And the next webinar will be coming up soon. We'll tell you about that as well. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you all.
Thank you.